I bought one when they were here some time ago, and I just want to make you aware that they are available to you, and you can enjoy this lovely music at your own leisure. Ernest Holmes wrote, "When we speak the words of thanksgiving to the God within, knowing before they ask I will answer, there is something in this attitude of thanksgiving that carries us beyond the field of doubt into one of perfect faith and acceptance, receptivity, realization, excuse me, appreciation, gratitude, and thanksgiving, the motive power which attracts and magnifies the hidden potentialities of life." Please read the affirmation on the screen or the front of your program with me with that power. I know that I am one with the source of all good, as I express my divine nature in all my thoughts, words, and actions. My good expands in beautiful, miraculous, and glorious ways from expected and unexpected channels.
We see your tallness. We see
This is what deaf people hear. This is a story, as Mary said or Nancy said in her reading, of the potential of life. This is all of our lives. It's filled with faith, gratitude, and love. This is also my story as my journey as a grandmother that began 26 years ago in the year 1990. And I just heard someone say, "Oh, she's going to brag about her grandkids." I hear that coming. And that's true. That's true. But there's more. There's so much more. This is also a story of perseverance, willpower, determination, support, basically from me as a grandmother, and unlimited love. So let's go back to the year 1990, just to take you back on a little journey. Internationally, the Berlin Wall was falling. Nationally, the tech world was not as it is now. Actually, Windows 3, does anybody remember Windows 3? Is what was on your computer, if you had a computer. Car phones were a real novelty. That's what we know now as our appendix of the cell phone. And believe this or not, the first web page had just been posted.
Wow.
One web page. Okay. On a personal level, I was still working and was living in Middletown and working in Wilmington. And my daughter, Lemaine, who is here today, you all heard her name a little earlier, she was working. She was 27 years old. I was 26 years younger. Thought you were going to get on that one, but you didn't. And her husband, Mike, was working. He was working in Wilmington. And at this point, they lived in Galena, Maryland. I'm not sure if you know where that is. It's a little town over the line from Delaware. It's a very small farming community. It's on your way to Chestertown. And it was also the year my grandson, Jonathan, was born. So I brought some collage pictures in of the grandkitties that were out there. He was really, really active. He was engaged in everything. He didn't miss a thing. He was like visually there, every little thing that happened. He was right there watching it. When he was around 8 months old, I was visiting them in Galena, and my daughter Lemaine was sitting, and she had him on her lap, and he was facing outward, and she held up the old-fashioned tin coffee cups or cans. They're now kind of plastic or whatever, but anyway, they were tin, and she had it partway filled with popcorn kernels. And she shook it with all of her might, like shook it behind his head, and he never turned around. He never flinched. He never had any sense of all that anything was going on behind him. He was just doing what he always did, just very much aware of everything in front of him. And she said, "Do you think there's a problem?" Well, emotionally, even before she said that, I can remember that this moment, or moments, so clearly. I literally froze. I was catatonic. Except for my stomach, which was heaving. I mean, I was literally, I couldn't comprehend. My mind was flipping like, there's something wrong, this isn't happening, this is a joke, there's another explanation, this isn't real. Anyway, it was real. For nights, I didn't sleep. I didn't know what to do. And I think probably some of you can relate. When something terribly unexpected happened that changed your world, in a blink, everything you had known changed. And maybe it happened more than once. And still not knowing for sure, but intuitively I knew, we kind of all knew. But the good part, and we always say everything's good, Lemaine was very involved in her church, which for many, many, many years gave her great support, courage, and strength. I had just begun Science of Mind. I was a real newbie. But, and I still do today, because probably some of you have heard me say this, part of one verse of the 23rd Psalm was my anchor, and that is, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear." And to me, death doesn't mean a physical death. It can, but it doesn't have to. It can also mean the death of a dream, an expectation, a desire, a job, a relationship, anything that you've known that could die. But the verse says, walk through the valley. It doesn't say run. It says walk through, which to me, and this is my total interpretation of this, it means when you walk through to get clarity and direction. And it doesn't say stop. It doesn't say stop and live your whole freaking rest of your life there and build a condo and live there forever. It says walk through. And then it says do not fear. Change that fear into faith. And as I just heard recently, faith evolves into reality. I did know to use affirmations such as I have faith that all is going to work out perfectly. Didn't know it at the time, but I still used that affirmation. The testing had begun. A reliable test was achieved. Profound in one ear, severe in the other, deaf. Which translates into not hearing a jet plane 30 feet over your head. Just imagine for a moment what it would be like for you never to hear a bird chirp, never to hear the wind rustle the leaves of a tree, never to hear a kitten purr. Just imagine. Since it is difficult even today to communicate with someone who cannot hear, my fear, which I still have to always transfer into faith, was that people would treat this beautiful, energetic little child differently than other children. And I needed, and I still do, need to work on knowing this was not going to be his fate. And Lemaine was deeply blaming herself for this situation because during her pregnancy she had been sick for a couple weeks. It was her fault. Her fault that he was deaf. And she beat herself up. So she needed great faith and forgiveness and to affirm that all was in divine order. No one in either of our families on either side was deaf. In fact, we were all tested at Caladet and different places, and they just decided 2 recessive genes got together and made it dominant. But the work began. We all entered into a new world, new to us. Hearing aids. Well, one anyway, because the profound ear was totally deaf, was prescribed. Again, I was really, really naive. I thought, wow, he's going to have a hearing aid, everything's going to be wonderful. But that wasn't the way it was. The instructions, I went with them, and the instructions were, don't put the hearing aid in on the way home, because if he hears a noise he's never heard before, which was anything, it would scare him. So you only put him in for a certain amount of time a day, to get him used to maybe hearing some background sounds. And as you even know today, hearing aids aren't the panacea that they're prescribed to be, because anybody that just has, kind of hearing impaired, if you put a hearing aid in and you have a lot of background noise, you don't hear words spoken in front of you because everything's amplified. Lemaine studied every resource that she could uncover, which was at her fingertips, which 26 years ago isn't the way it is today. So, and I also researched, I also offered support, many, many phone calls for information. The beginning resources were found. The universe provided. The Maryland School for the Deaf, for years, sent out 2 teachers a week to teach speech and language, and they're 2 totally different subjects. If you're not familiar with that, speech is teaching someone to say a word. And just imagine, it's a little tiny kid, 2 or 3 years old, trying to say a word he's never heard. Just imagine what that would be like for you. And then language is a totally different thing, which takes too long to go into for this. And Lemaine just wanted a way to communicate with her son. That was what she couldn't do. So she was given a book by these gals that came out on how to begin to teach herself sign language, and which she did. She taught herself signed English. And I attended sign classes for a while. I totally flunked. But she did teach herself signed English, and she signed everything. And I mean everything that was said to them, around them, and before them. And she still does today. And of course, they also sign. And I say for them, because my granddaughter Audrey had also been born. She, of course, was always in the back harness Lemaine wore, and she went everywhere Jonathan went. And she could hear loud noises, so there wasn't any problem, right? She could hear car doors slam, and she could hear the front door slam, and she could hear the telephone ring. But at the age of 2, she wasn't talking. So, obviously there's another problem, right? You got to deal with some kind of learning disability. But a miracle happened. Jonathan was tested every 3 or 4 months to make sure that the severe ear was staying stable, and he had always had hearing aids changed because his ears were growing. And one day he refused to be tested, actually threw a tantrum. And Audrey was there, so Lemaine says, "Oh, test her." Well, her hearing came back moderate, which means even though she can hear all these other noises, she can't hear speech. She can't hear the decimal of levels of speech and below. She could hear the loud noises. So that began her work with hearing aids, speech, and language. And along the way, we had visited STIRC, which is now the Delaware School for the Deaf. We had gone to Gallaudet University, which does not believe in hearing aids. I don't know what you people know or don't know, so I'll just tell you what I found out. They believe that the deaf community is a culture, a minority group. So they do not believe in cochlear implants, they don't believe in hearing aids, they only believe in sign and interpreters, and now they do text with the current technology. Now around 3, Audrey was very mechanical and very inquisitive. So she always was fooling around with taking stuff apart. Well, she took her hearing aids apart one day. And Lemaine's running around signing, where's this part, where's that part, where's that part? And, she's finding all the parts, and she says, "Where are the batteries?" And Audrey's going,
Oh, my God.
and she's saying, "Audrey, where are the batteries? The batteries?" And Audrey's going, "You swallowed the batteries?" Yeah. I mean, she didn't say yes, but yes. So that was a trip to the hospital. Everything worked out okay, no pun there. They had been mainstreamed. They never, to this day, maybe later on, they've never been involved in the deaf community. They were mainstreamed into an elementary school in Galena because they were, my daughter and I totally supported this, believed in total communication, which means you get information into them any way you can. That's hearing aids, that's interpreters, that's speech, that's any way that you can get information in. So mainstreaming into the school in Galena was wonderful because it was a really small school and the teachers could work one-on-one. The kids were all little, so there was no discrimination, no what they would call today bullying. And these kids today still have these long-term friends from that school. They moved to Middletown, and the schools were much larger, so my daughter immediately started to homeschool. At this point, Audrey was in 4th grade, Jonathan was in 6th. So she homeschooled for many, many years. They also belonged to a homeschool group which provided socialization. 9th grade came, and Jonathan had an application in for Wilmington Charter, which I cannot say enough about positively. And it was a really long wait, a long summer. And Lemaine was very into, they're not going to take him because he's deaf, they're not going to take him because they don't want to pay for an interpreter, which was an accommodation that the public schools have to do when you have a child with some type of disability. And I had my science and mind background. That said, through my affirmations, he will absolutely be accepted, even though he's way out of the Ray Clay district, because he was in Middletown, because he was hearing impaired, he was deaf. They would want that as, my rationalization, as a mark, that they could work with people with challenges. And he was accepted. And then it came for an interpreter, because, he needed one. A week before he started Charter, a gal was found who was an interpreter. And she stayed with him all 4 years through Charter, which meant she went to every class with him, signed everything that the teachers were saying, and he would translate from the board to the interpreter and then take his own notes. And when they got on to more advanced classes like chemistry and physics, she would have gone over the curriculum before, and they would make up their own signs because at this point they ran out of the signs. And so anyway, he went through the whole 4 years. And then Audrey also went to charter. And she, only because of her hearing issues, she needed the mic that the teacher spoke into, and then she had the headsets, which were on the same frequency. So the teachers accommodated with all that. Anyway, my affirmations were that all works out perfectly. A college came, and they both went to the University of Delaware. Now, Jonathan went, and they provided, since it's a state school, what they call a CART system, which translates into like a court reporter. And there was a guy that went all through 4 years with him to every class, and he would type on a court recorder, and somewhere in the world this would all translate into readable English on his computer. So he thought he was on vacation because he didn't have to go from the board to the the interpreter. He could just read his computer, and then he had a note taker also. When Audrey went, she also went back, she still had the mic and the headsets. So much more for the early years, with the years of adjustment, studying, research, and the kids and the intense learner. And as Oprah would say, where are they now? Dan's cue. Here they are. Gorgeous kids, aren't they? They are awesome. I told you I was going to brag about these kids. Jonathan is a chemical engineer. He's working in Washington, D.C. for the government in the patent office. And it's all not totally perfect. They just got him a phone that prints out everything said because he can't talk on a phone. And it's a little cumbersome sometimes for lawyers that talk a mile a minute. And there's this hesitation because Jonathan's trying to read what they're saying. But it's working. And Audrey, this gorgeous gal that just left the screen, has, believe this or not, completed her master's in applied economic statistics.
Wow.
I have no idea what that means. For gratitude, these kids never gave up. They did it all. They didn't throw the towel in, saying, I'm not doing it. It's too hard. It's too complicated. I don't like having these people follow me to different classes. It's embarrassing. They did it all with grace and endurance. And they, to my knowledge, never complained. They probably did to Lemaine, but I didn't hear it. My daughter and her husband never quit. They did more than I could say in this talk, for focusing their lives on what was important, helping to make their children the very best they could be. And this, I know, made me a more open, caring person for situations I didn't understand. And I'm grateful I could have been supportive. And I'm so grateful for the update in technology for texting, which the deaf community uses all the time. Closed caption, so they now can watch television and know what's being said. Because just imagine going to the theater and not having an idea of what's being said, or going to a movie theater and not knowing. So it makes their lives so much easier. And then forgiveness for all the things we needed to forgive ourselves for, and for taking all the wonderful things we have for granted. And that's for me and others. And this is like preaching to the choir. But be kind. Always be kind to others. You never know what challenges they're going through. And always trust, always have faith that whatever it is, it's going to work out. And I could end here, But I want to share you a beautiful, majestic dance performed by Niall DeMarco. And if you watch Dancing with the Stars, he won this season. He's a Gallaudet graduate, totally deaf, and he cannot hear this music. Just watch. He uses sign interpreters and text.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking. People hearing without listening. And the signs and the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls, in tenement halls, and whispered in the sound of silence.
And so it is.